So good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Walton. I am the president of the Osbcu, and it's fantastic to see so many people here for tonight's discussion about building a state of strike readiness. This is the first opportunity of its kind for the Osbcu, and it definitely will not be our last. It's a great opportunity to be able to connect with members from the front line in a space that we all can be together. This webinar is available in both English and French, and you may choose the language of your choice by selecting the globe at the bottom of your screen where it says interpretation. You can choose English or you can choose French. This webinar will also be recorded. We had amazing response to this session, but we also recognize that many of our coworkers are currently working their additional jobs or were unavailable tonight. As part of our ongoing commitment to transparency, we want to ensure this meeting is available to all workers moving forward. On the webinar tonight, we have members, including presidents, executives, lead organizers, education workers from school board locals across the province. The Osbcu executive has joined us, as well as our organizing team and CUPE national staff servicing school board locals. I'm happy to have you all with us tonight as we share important details and next steps around getting ready to lead a successful central strike if necessary to win the mandate for negotiations that you have set out. We have a lot of information that we need to get through tonight, but we also want to give ample opportunity for questions. We highly recommend having pencil and paper handy to jot down notes and any possible questions. Questions can be asked by selecting the Q&A button, and many of you have found it at the bottom. Questions are going to be answered by the team that you see on here today, and they may also be answered live. Please keep your comments and your questions respectful. We will be following up with a frequently asked questions document following this call. Let's get started. We are first going to hear from Mona Staples. Mona is Mona Staples is my co-negotiator. Sorry, I'm getting a little piece of paper saying we also have live transcriptions. So there you go. Mona is a co-negotiator at the bargaining table with me. Mona, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to take you through what has been offered at the bargaining table and what we asked for and how the Crown and the Council of Trustees Association have responded. So first, on wages. As many of you may have seen, we asked for $3.25 an hour for all classifications in each year of a 3-year agreement. You need that increase because you've lived through a decade of wage cuts and you're now facing high rates of inflation. But what they offered us in response was, quite frankly, an insult. They offered us 2% in each year for members earning less than $40,000 a year. And when we asked for clarification about that, they said it wouldn't apply if you earn less than $40,000 by virtue of where you sit on the wage grid, so long as the top of the wage grid is $40,000 or more. So for anyone who makes more than $40,000 or who could make more than $40,000, the increase is 1.25%. Neither 2% or 1.25% will keep up with inflation. Their offer works out to an average of $800 per year, less than $20 per week for most of you, when prices for food, shelter, and fuel are skyrocketing. It would mean that by the end of the collective agreement, your wages would be over 20% lower in real terms than they were in 2012. And under no circumstances will we agree to this insulting offer. For casuals, we ask that they be paid the same rate as permanent employees in recognition of the principle of equal pay for equal work. They didn't even counteroffer. They just said no. For job security, we ask that they protect your jobs by embedding the job security language in the collective agreement with no end date. We want to restrict their ability to cut jobs, and we want it clearly spelled out in the collective agreement exactly what the number of positions should be for every school board. They said no. In fact, even more insultingly, they have said they do not want to renew our job security protections at all. That would mean no job security protections in central terms. They repeatedly say that the boards want greater flexibility. What does that mean? That means they want the flexibility to get rid of jobs whenever they want. They want the flexibility to cut classifications. They want to be able to reallocate budgets from CUPE members to other things to spend on. Flexibility for the bosses always means less stability for workers. We asked them to renew funding to protect jobs and increase funding to improve staffing levels and to keep up with higher wages. They said no to additional funding for more jobs. And if there's no additional funding to cover wage increases, that could lead to job cuts. We asked for a DCE in every kindergarten class, regardless of class size. They said no. They want greater flexibility, the kind of flexibility that allows them to cut a DECE jobs, the kind of flexibility that denies thousands of the youngest learners the benefits of the two-educator model. We asked for minimum weekly hours of work for education workers, either 35 or 40 hours a week. And once again, they said no. They want flexibility, and they enjoy the cost savings of having a DECE and EAs work 32.5 or 30 hours per week, or giving custodians less than 40 hours. And we could list off a lot of classifications at virtually every board where you, the members, are being shortchanged hours you need to do your jobs. We asked for minimum standards on vacation, premiums, and allowances, leaves of absences. As you probably can guess by now, their answer was no. There did seem to be a vague reference to increasing allowances and premiums, but there were no specifics. And when we asked what that meant, it sounded like they thought there would only be an increase of 1.25% per year, the same as the insulting offer. We asked for increased funding for benefits. They proposed to freeze benefit funding at the current level for the entire life of the collective agreement. What does that mean? That means that even though the cost of benefits will increase by at least 5.5% every year, there would be no money to pay for those increases. In other words, either you would get cuts to your benefits or you'll have to pay more for them by 2024. We asked them to pay those of you whose core duties are directly related to student learner instruction for the prep time you now do for free, and they said no. Currently, many of you who do this work are giving the boards an average of 66 hours of free work each school year, and they want that to continue. They don't value the work you do or appreciate how much it contributes to the student learning experience. We asked for violence prevention training, and no surprise here, they said no. They will roll out the violence prevention training that they were required to do 2 years ago, and which they failed to roll out. But they view that as sufficient for fulfilling their commitment and view the issue as resolved. And on top of all of this, they are proposing a massive cut to your short-term disability plan. They want to cut the first 5 days of your 120 short-term disability days to 25% of wages. They want to introduce an application process for getting those 120 days. And they only want to allow members who take 5 or more consecutive days to have access to those 120 days. This would effectively deny most members access to short-term disability days. To be absolutely clear, we are not going to accept a concession on sick leave. We didn't in 2019, and we won't in 2022. We will not ever. So far, we've got a lot of no from them, with an added demand for an unacceptable concession. Back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Mona. As you've heard, the proposals that we put in front of the government and your bosses at the school boards is one that is reasonable, affordable, and above all, necessary. Many of you have probably heard the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, compare our ask to that of budgets of entire provinces. These are huge hyperboles with a focus on spreading propaganda and fear-mongering. Prior to any proposal being set, your elected bargaining team had been researching data about collective agreements, monitoring the rates of inflation, and most importantly, talking to you, the worker, through our forums and our surveys. In fact, our wage proposal was finalized mere days prior to the presentation, as we wanted to ensure it was the most up-to-date ask based on the most up-to-date information. Here to share information about why our ask is indeed affordable is Dan Crow, researcher for the school board sector. Dan.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks everybody for allowing me to speak. I just want to take a few moments to explain why our proposals are reasonable, affordable, and necessary. I have a few graphs to show to help demonstrate. The first graph compares our members' wage increases to inflation from 2012 to 2024, based on data from the Government of Ontario and projections by the Bank of Canada. The graph shows that our members' wage increases have only been 8.8% from 2012 to 2021. This is in large part due to legislated wage restraint. Over the same period, costs of your everyday needs have gone up by 19.5%. That works out to a 10.7% wage cut for CUPE education workers, in fact, for all education workers in Ontario. Inflation over the next 3 years is projected to be between 15 and 17%. Based on what the government offered, that would be another wage cut of 9 to 11%, or a total wage cut of 20 to 22% up to the end of 2025. This graph did not factor in our wage proposal. It was intended to show what happens to our members' wages in the absence of substantial wage increases. The next slide shows the total cost of members' wages compared to total government revenue. The big bars show how much money the government is bringing in up to the end of 2024-25 based on their own projections. The second bar, and yes, there are actually two bars on this graph, is the total cost of CUPE education workers' wages. And on this graph, I did include a full costing of our wage proposal. Those little nubs are getting bigger. It's just difficult to see in comparison to how much revenue the government is bringing in. This shows that our proposals are absolutely affordable for the Government of Ontario. This final graph shows our members' wages as a percentage of total government revenue. As we can see, from 2012 to 2021, there is a steady downward trend. Our members' wages have taken up a smaller and smaller percentage of total government revenue. If our wage proposal was accepted, that is $3.25 per hour for each member in each year of a 3-year collective agreement, our members' wages as a percent of total government revenue would still be lower than it was in 2012 to 2015. Once again, what we are proposing is completely affordable.
Thank you, Dan. You have heard about your proposals and how the government and the school board have responded. You've heard how the asks were made and how they were grounded in fact and research. The bargaining team has done what you as workers have asked them to do. They have presented your proposals and are fighting to achieve gains. But good collective agreements, they're not won by 10 or 15 people around a bargaining table. Real gains are won by the workers in our schools, in our workplaces, and with our communities. To talk more about this, I would like to introduce Rod McGee, First Vice President.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, all. I just wanted to talk to you about my experience with striking. Making that decision is hard. When my local decided to strike in 1997, I was just starting my family with a 7-month-old child. My wife at the time was not working. We were scared of the possibility of a long strike. No strike pay for the first 10 days, and rumors from the board office we would all be terminated. But it was time. After 7 years of no wage increases and another offer of another 3 years of zero, we were ready though. We had no blackout, so we could talk to our members and the community. And boy, did we. Without the use of cell phones, we didn't have much choice. Before the vote, we went school to school. We went to members' houses, talked to them in coffee shops. We ended up achieving a 95% strike mandate with close to 90% participation. We fought hard. We had solid picket lines and solid messaging. and we won 3% increases. And on today's wages, that amounts to around $2 per hour that we would not have today. Stephen Leachy is not at the bargaining table with us. Instead, he has a team of employees plus 2 lawyers that the government has contracted to act as consultants. Their combined hourly billing is more than our entire bargaining committee would make in a month. However, are you aware that a member from your board's senior management is also either at the table or in the back room? That's right. The deal that was offered to us last week was made by the same people who are your bosses. This is why it is so important that throughout the province, each and every school and worksite should be buzzing about the Why Vote Yes campaign. Your principals and supervisors need to know that you're joining with your brothers and sisters across the province to demand better. It is this pressure that will impact the decisions your bosses make when they are at our table. They need to know that we are ready to fight, and not just at a picket line, but we are ready to fight now. In order to achieve the gains we as workers need, we will need a high participation in our strike vote. Our goal is 80% of the membership participating in the vote with 95% voting yes. Not just 80% voting yes, but at least 80% of you and your coworkers voting. Last round, the provincial average was only 43%. That showed your bosses that the majority of you were not ready to fight, and the outcome of the agreement was a result. For the next few weeks, our collective focus must be on achieving 80% of the members voting and achieving 95% in favor of the strike. This display of power will send a clear message to the government and bosses. This isn't just union leaders making noise. This is all of us standing together to demand better. This is our focus, not picket locations, not porta potties, or picket kits. Our focus is on getting our coworkers out to the vote, ensuring they vote yes. Back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Rod. And Rod's completely right. A strike vote is not an automatic move to the picket line. A strike vote is a visible sign that you and your coworkers are ready and determined to get a real deal that addresses the concerns that you have. Many of you might be asking, how do we double the amount of people who voted last time? For this information, I want to turn to Sarah DeClercq, organizer with the school board sector.
Thanks, Laura. So tonight we are moving to the next step in the organizing campaign to build worker power so that you and all of your coworkers can use your greatest power as workers to put maximum pressure on the government and the Council of Trustee Associations to win your demands. The next step in the campaign is to go into the workplace and have face-to-face organizing conversations with all 55,000 members over the next 4 weeks about voting yes in the strike vote, which will take place starting September 23rd. And you'll hear more information about this timeline in a few minutes. Locals have organizing committee meetings scheduled this week and next week to review the plan, to talk with each and every member. If you're on this webinar and you want to join the campaign to build power, to reach out, you should reach out to your local executive about joining your local's organizing or strike committee. During the organizing conversations, members will be talking about what is at stake in this round of negotiations, including what you are fighting for in bargaining and the government's response to your proposals. Member organizers will be talking with coworkers about the importance of all members committing to vote yes in the strike vote and being ready not to report to work and to participate in a strike if necessary. Because when you and all of your coworkers are united and ready to strike if necessary, it will give you the power to win. It is going to be really important to confirm your preferred personal email address with your local's organizing committee, because the central strike vote is going to be an electronic ballot, and it will be sent to your personal email address. The one-on-one conversations that all of you will have with your coworkers are also an opportunity to make sure that all members are signed up to receive the Central Bargaining Committee updates and have signed the form that all of you will need to sign to be eligible for strike pay. Most important of all will be for everyone on the webinar tonight and beyond to talk with at least 2 or 3 of your coworkers and share your own reasons for voting yes, and to ask your coworkers if they too are ready to fight to win a real wage increase, job security, and more, and commit to voting yes in the strike vote. Back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Sarah. Many of you are already asking questions, and many of you probably have more questions about how this strike vote is going to happen. For that information, I would like to introduce you to Dave Howe, Assistant Regional Director, to discuss the central strike, the platform that will be used, and what you as a worker need to know.
Thanks, Laura. The strike vote this time is going to be a little different this time around than it has been previously. This time, it's going to be done centrally through a digital platform. Over the course of the pandemic, many of our locals have shifted to holding votes electronically, and we've found that electronic voting allows more people to be able to participate and helps with our goal of a huge turnout for this vote. The electronic process is going to be managed for us by DOTS, a company called Data on the Spot. They're a neutral external company who will be able to ensure that your ballot is secret and secure. Many of you will be familiar with DOTS, who have managed votes for us for the virtual QP Ontario and Osbcu convention. By law, the Osbcu is the bargaining agent for the central bargaining process, including the central strike vote. And we have made the decision to conduct the vote digitally to ensure as much participation as possible, so we can send an incredibly strong message to both the government and your employers. In the coming weeks, there are going to be many opportunities to make sure that your local has your preferred email address. And it's really important for you to make sure that that information is up to date, because your local is going to be providing that information directly to DOTS. And this is how you will receive your ballot from DOTS when the strike vote occurs. I'm going to turn things back to Laura to talk about the next steps in the coming weeks.
So listen, this has been a ton of information for many of you to take in. And the information is coming fast and furious these days. And I want to take a moment before we head to questions to talk about what this means to you, your families, your students, and your communities. First, let's talk about strike pay. Strike pay is $300 per week from the very first day of strike, so we don't have to wait like Rod did back in the day, from the very first day of strike, based on participating in 20 hours of strike picket duty. This time, because we're doing a central strike, folks will be able to participate in a picket line that is closest to them. Many of you have already said that you live in one place but work in another. And this way you will be able to strike at a picket location that is closer to your home. The key for us is making sure that striking works for the workers. In the upcoming weeks, there are going to be people who are coming around who will be offering you an opportunity to fill out the Form E, which enables you to sign up for your picket pay and be ready to go should we have a strike happen. But I want to be clear, we have less than 4 weeks. We have less than 4 weeks before the strike vote begins on September 23rd. What does that mean? It means at this point, we have to be all hands on deck. And I know for many of you, you're tired. You have been working multiple jobs. You've been struggling through an EI system that has been less than fair. And it's the summer and you're tired. We are all coming out of 2 years of chaos thanks to this government and how they handled the pandemic. But I want to talk to you about tired. I'm tired. I'm really tired. But my understanding is there's this thing that happens when you're running a marathon. There's a point when you're running a marathon where you get to the halfway mark and you're tired. You're really, really tired. And at that point, you need to make a decision. Do I give up on the years and years of training that I have been doing and just stop? Do I scale back and walk to the finish line so that I can get a participation ribbon and say that, yeah, I was here? Or you can do what so many people do, and that's dig deep and finish the race. Dig deep even though you're tired and push on through, because there's going to be a moment of clarity where you realize that your tired wasn't really tired at all, and you can fight what's ahead of you. And the reason that you do it is because you're not wanting a participation ribbon. You want the trophy. And friends, that's what we're here for today. As workers across this province, we no longer can depend on a participation trophy, or that the courts or the government or the legal system is going to give us what we deserve. How many of you through Bill 115 lost gratuities and sick days and wages and only received a pittance in response? The time right now is for us to dig deep, even though we are tired, and we need to push on through, because we're not here to collect a participation ribbon. We are here to win. And together, I know we can. So we are going to take some of the many questions that folks have asked, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie and the crew to help guide me through which questions you need me to answer first. So the first question that I see is from Ryan. Ryan Frayne has asked, can the government still mandate us to work to rule? So work to rule is a decision actually that comes from the union. Work to rule is a legal strike position where you actually are removing portions of the services that you provide while still being at work. And the government actually has no ability to mandate us on that. So no, the government cannot mandate us to work to rule. That would be a decision that would come from the union. And on the weekend, it was clear from your leadership that they have been talking and they've been listening to you, and that there is not the desire of the workers currently to do work to rule. Steve Watson is asking why we are waiting longer to give a strike mandate. Sarah, maybe you can explain, because this is a new thing for this sector. Normally we call for a strike vote and we go into it right away. Maybe you can explain why we're doing a longer runway.
Sure. First of all, it's not a very long runway. It's only a less than 4-week runway, but the reason for it is to allow time for all of you and all of your local organizing committees and strike committees to go out and talk with each and every single member. And that's a lot of members. A lot of you have probably been part of that organizing. It's been going on for many months now. But we're at a critical moment in bargaining right now where it will be important to go back and talk with each and every member, find those members that you didn't talk with the first time and go back to each and every member and connect with them, find out what is important to them in this round of negotiations, share with them the employer's response to your reasonable, affordable, and necessary proposals, and talk with them about what it will take to win those proposals and ask them to commit to vote yes. The 4 weeks will also allow time for members to get signed up for the central bargaining updates. We know there are members who are still needing to get signed up to receive all of the open and transparent bargaining updates from the bargaining committee directly, and to get signed up for picket pay, as Laura was talking about.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I hope that answered the question. So we do have a couple of questions in here, and it's like the big elephant that's in the room. And we do have Alex on the call here tonight. He is legal with us. Alex, there's a couple of questions about what do we do if we get mandated back to work. I'm just kind of scrolling through to see if there's other ones in there. Maybe you could help folks out with legislating back to work.
Of course, Laura, and we know that's something that we're worried about, and many folks are worried about. Look, we all know that the government has repeatedly used legislation in the past against QB school board workers. And let's be clear, that legislation has never been good for us. A lot of you will remember Bill 115, which gave us zeros and sick leave concessions back in 2012 to 14. Obviously, very fresh on our minds is Bill 124, which capped wages at 1% over the last 3 years. Legislation can take different forms, but it's never good for us. Let's be clear about that. The government uses legislation. Different governments, liberal and conservative governments, use legislation to restrict your right to strike, to prevent workers from making gains, and have actually caused your wages and working conditions to fall behind over the last 10 years. And that comes out very clearly in the graph that Dan has showed. That legislation has meant that your wages have not kept up with inflation. So we know that it's a possibility the government could try to pass legislation that hurts us again. But nothing it has been tabled yet. The government has not put any legislation forward in the legislature, and we know that legislation is not inevitable. So it's possible, but it's not inevitable. And I think it's really important to say that, because our goal right now has to be so strong, so united, so organized, and have such high levels of public support that the government wouldn't dare impose legislation. And you might be thinking, Alex, you're dreaming in Technicolor. That all sounds very nice, but that sounds way too optimistic. And here is what I'll say. I think it's actually realistic. Here's why. Our QB siblings in New Brunswick had a fight last year with their government that many of you probably heard about. And like us, they were facing a conservative majority government under a premier named Blaine Higgs, who, if you can believe it, is maybe even more right-wing than Doug Ford, in a province that is dominated by oil barons and French fry barons. So they've got lots of billionaires in New Brunswick for a very small province. And those billionaires don't like wage increases either, and they're putting pressure on the government not to give in. And the Higgs government started with an offer of 5% over 4 years. And so that's going to ring some bells for a lot of you, because that's roughly where the government is sitting now for members earning over $40,000 a year. And QP workers in New Brunswick went on strike. And even though the government was a conservative government, very right-wing government, not supportive of workers, QP members were so strong, they were so united, they had such high levels of public support that the government didn't dare legislate away their right to strike. And in fact, what happened is the government came to the bargaining table. If you can believe it, the Premier of New Brunswick himself came to the bargaining table, and they got wage increases of between 15 and 17% over 5 years. So they made really big gains. Remember, they were going in with an offer of just 5%. And so some people ended up 12% ahead of where they were going into that strike. And I think that shows us what's possible, even under a conservative majority government, when we work together, when we're strong, united, and organized. And so that story gives hope to me, even in a context where, of course, we have a government that is not particularly friendly to workers. So I think that's that's what keeps me optimistic.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. We had a really good question come up about when the government said they would increase wages by 2% for those making less than 40,000. Is that over 10 months or 12? And it's what your work pays you. So if you're a 10-month member and you earn under 40,000, that's yours. Which means that there may be people that in the first year will pop over to, the 1.25. They do not consider if you're a 10-month member now, your position most likely is not a 12-month position. None of our 10-month positions are 12-month positions. So if you are an EA, a CDA, ECE, many of our clerical, library workers, CYWs, the majority of those positions are 10 months. And so it is the wage that you earn from your employer that will be determined as the 40,000. Hope that helps. There's a really good question here about striking on sick leave or maternity leave, etc. And I was wondering, is there somebody who would like to answer how does strike pay work when you are on sick leave or maternity leave? Dave or Sarah?
Sure.
I-
Sorry, do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the strike fund regulations that are a document approved by the National Executive Board contemplate exactly this. And it says that if you are in receipt of those benefits, you're not eligible for strike pay. And our position would be that if you are on a leave that is compensated by your employer, that they should continue to pay those benefits. But the strike fund regulations also say that if you stop being in receipt of those benefits, that you become eligible for picket pay. And what you do in terms of picket duty, there are also abilities to accommodate. If you're not able to be on a picket line, there will be a process to be able to address those accommodations. So rest assured, our first position is that your employer should be on the hook and continue paying your sick leave. If your employer is going to play nasty fool, then the strike fund recognizes that that's a possibility, and there are provisions to make sure that you're covered. And if you can't do normal picket duty, there are provisions to be able to make sure that we can find accommodated ways for you to be able to support the strike.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. A really good question came up that said, if there's strike preparations happening, shouldn't the rank and file be involved in those preparations? And I think this is something that sings to Sarah's heart, so I'm going to flip it over to her so I can hear her say yes.
Kind of answered the question. I mean, there's lots and lots of opportunities to get involved. Most local organizing committees and strike committees are looking for more members to join, and also reaching out to members to recruit picket captains, because we're looking to make sure that there are 5,000 picket captains ready to organize up to 15 members across the province. So reach out to your local executive and find out how you can join the local organizing committee and the strike committee, because this week and next week they will be meeting to make sure there's a plan in place in your local union to go out and talk with each and every member about the employer's response to your proposals, what it will take to win, and voting yes in the strike vote.
Thanks, Sarah. A really good question has come up because, we're fighting for casual workers too, right? Having casuals, start at the start rate, having casuals having a seniority list that actually works instead of just, kind of ceremonial. And one of the questions that's on here is, how does the strike pay work if you're an occasional supply staff? So as a supply or a casual, temporary, there's many names that our school boards use, you are completely eligible to do strike duty, and it can be prorated. However, we find that most casual folks are quite happy to do the 20 hours a week and get the same $300 that permanent workers, and we encourage you to do that. There should be no delineation between a casual worker and a permanent worker. We're all members of the same union. I hope that helps. The next question that I see is strike pay for $300 a week. I assume there's deductions from this. And no, the answer is there are no deductions from strike pay. It's just a check that comes from your local to you. Just going through to make sure we get all of the questions. Is it mandatory for employees to picket? Will there be repercussions by the union? Sarah, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, it isn't mandatory by law to participate in the strike, but it'll be critical that every member participates in the strike, to have a strong strike, and to use your maximum power as workers to win in this round of negotiations. So the most important thing is to go and talk with each and every member about what matters most to them in this round of negotiations, and why they would personally feel connected to this round of negotiations and want to participate in the strike, and explain to them how important it is that each and every member participates. So that's the point of the launch of the Why Vote Yes conversations that are going to be taking place across workplaces and locals in Ontario.
Awesome, thank you. So somebody is asking, is work to rule required? No, we do not, or we're not required to do work to rule. And work to rule has purposes in some places. But I'm going to say the same thing that I say to many folks. The asks that you are making, the gains that we as workers need, the ability to pay your bills, the ability to not be seeking out food bank support, and having housing insecurity, those types of gains, the security to know that you're sure that your job is still there year after year, those types of gains will not be won by work to rule. Work to rule has its purpose, but for the fight that we're in right now, we do not see work to rule as a viable option at this time. Can we have 2 or 3 days in the strike in a week? At this time, that's not being considered. Somebody is asking, in order to receive our strike pay, we need to picket for 20 hours. Does that need to be 4 hours per day or at any time, any day? Sarah, do you want to
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so right now, regional picketing committees are meeting to develop picket shifts. Yes, those will be, for the most part, 4-hour shifts, and there will be more communication to follow about the shifts in your region, and how to make sure that you're on those picket lines if there is a central strike. So yeah, but they are 4-hour shifts, and the reason is because you want to make sure that you have as much coverage through the week, Monday to Friday, as possible. And so yes, the shift is 4 hours a day, 5 times a week, in order to receive the 20 hours. There are exceptions that can be made on a case-by-case basis, but it's really case by case, and there'll need to be conversations with regional picketing committees to work through all of that.
Mona, there's a really good question here about the strips that the government and the school boards are proposing to our short-term leave. Many did not even know that this was an attack that had been passed across the table. Could you explain how that works?
So you get your 11 days at 100%, as many of you know, and then you get 120 days. And so if you are sick one day after 11, for example, you get a day at 90%. That's how it works currently. So if you have, you've used your 10 days, your 11 days, and you continue to be sick, then you go into your 120 days. Or if you've used your 11 days and now you've got another cold, and it's going to be for 3 days off, you're going to get another 3 days. So that's how it works now. What they want is to, after 11 days, put up barriers to our members using the 120. They want the 5 days, the first 5 days of those 120 paid at 25%. So to disincentivize people from using them, right? And they want you to be off sick for 5 days consecutively in order to access them at all. So if you're sick for 3 days, you don't get them. And you'd have to be sick for 5 days consecutively. You would have to take 25% less. And then they also wanted on top of that some kind of application process for you to go through in order to even be eligible. So essentially nothing but barriers in the way to accessing your short-term disability leave.
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions regarding job descriptions, and I wanted to take a moment to just talk about that. Job descriptions and job evaluation is actually under the purview of the local. It is not a central item. And so local bargaining teams were sent coordinated language to be used at their local bargaining team, local bargaining tables to address those. So I would reach out to your local bargaining teams to ensure that those proposals are included in the passes that they will be making shortly to your employers. I wanted to share with folks, because we've had a lot of questions about some dates. And so I wanted to share a screen with you with some dates so folks could see them. So here are the important dates. Feel free to screenshot, snap it, whatever you need to do. Key dates that are going to be happening. From August 23rd to September 23rd, we are going to be doing the Why Vote Yes campaign. And as Sarah alluded to, that is going to be your coworkers talking to every single member in your local, in your schools, in your work sites around why to vote yes in the strike vote, making sure that your proper email address is there and that the Form E is completed. And the next piece, there will be a virtual strike meeting webinar. We will be hosting a strike meeting webinar that people can come participate like you hear tonight, and they can hear what is happening and where we are going before we do the strike vote. September 23rd at 12:01, the electronic strike vote will open. September 23rd at 11 a.m., there will be another virtual strike meeting webinar, and that is because we are accommodating the workers who on the 22nd would be at work in the evening. Between September 23rd and October 2nd, locals will be encouraged to have strike meetings either alone with their local or even more favorable in their actual regions. So combining locals that are in the same geographical space. On October 2nd at 6 p.m., electronic strike votes will close. And October 3rd at 9 a.m., the results of the strike vote will be shared with all members and with the public. And that will be going up on our Facebook page and out in an update so that people can see it and have it. And we do encourage folks to make sure you've signed up for those updates. The question that had come to me was, how soon could we be on strike? Well, it will be after October 3rd for sure, as we need to have the strike mandate before we move. Can we discuss the campaign with our coworkers while at work? Can we be disciplined if we're caught doing so? Sarah, maybe you can help them out with that one.
Yes, discuss the campaign with your coworkers at work. Try to do it, when you're not on work time, but yeah, absolutely. Talk to your coworkers as much as you can at work, before or after work. Make calls to your coworkers, set up times to meet with your coworkers, take lunch with your coworkers, talk with all of your coworkers about the importance of voting yes. 100%, 125% yes. Talk to all of your coworkers. And I trust that, all members will find ways to do that, that work.
Talk all the time is what we would tell you, covertly. So Kim is asking, it was mentioned the success in New Brunswick was due in part to public support. In Ontario, it seems a lot of of confusing information is being provided by the media. For example, headlines mention teachers, but we're education workers. Liche says anything that has to be given. Is there anything that the Osbcu can do to effectively counteract it and so that it can be out in the public? And I will say that we do, but it's actually the workers who have the most power to counteract this narrative that's out there. We continuously put things on our Facebook page and on Twitter. Please feel free to like, share, and then share it again on your local, union pages, on your personal pages, in your mom's groups. Be talking. Many of you are probably involved in community organizations. Maybe your kids play soccer or football or hockey. Be talking there. It's about workers talking to workers and in their communities. And there's going to be going out this week. I believe they are just being printed and shipped. A flyer that talks about this. Feel free to talk about this in the spaces that you're in. Join parent groups like the Ontario Parents Action Network. There's one in York. There's one in Scarborough. There is, lots of places where you can be talking it up in the public. The best way to counteract Stephen Liche's misinformation is to be making sure that the information that we know is factual is out. And that means sharing, and sharing again. We have a really good question, and I've seen it a couple of times. And maybe, Mona, you can discuss it. Metoo clauses. There seems to be this understanding that we have a Metoo clause in our contract. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, we don't have a Metoo clause. We are putting forward a Metoo Clause, and I know Lecce likes to talk a great deal about patterns and how everyone has to get the same thing. If he gives us something, he has to give it to everyone else, and that isn't true. We are not asking for the same thing as others, and we are distinguishing ourselves from others in order to get the best deal possible for QP workers.
Perfect, thank you. Somebody is asking, can casuals cross the line to work if we're on strike? Well, as a QP member and as someone that we are also negotiating to get improvements, crossing a picket line probably isn't going to help get those improvements. And I think I would leave it at that. I think it's in your best interest to be, practicing solidarity. Nancy Hurst is saying that we need to share, and share. Yes, I love sharing, and sharing. If you're on holidays during the strike, do you still get the holidays and the 300, or are you expected to be on the line? So if you check out the national strike regulations, you have to do picket duty. So if you are on vacation, no, you don't automatically get $300 plus your vacation pay. You would need to be performing picket duty. Somebody's saying they love the loony, the toonie, and the quarter thing. Thank you. We kind of enjoyed ourselves. Our custodians, part of the strike vote negotiations, and I think that's a great idea. Let me talk about that. We cover in the Osbcu 55,000 education workers that are in 4 different school board systems. So the English public, the English Catholic, the French public, and the French Catholic. We cover custodians, EAs, ECEs, CDAs, CYWs, PSWs, library workers, IT, speech pathologists, speech language assistants, psychometrists, maintenance, trades, custodians, caretakers, cleaners, security, lunchroom supervisors, student supervision monitors. I literally could spend hours talking about all of the classifications. And so, yes, every single worker who is a member of a QP local in a school board in Ontario should be participating in part of this strike vote because they are currently involved in negotiations. I hope that helps. Will schools be open? And I've seen this a couple of times where people are asking if they're going to go online, if they're going to be open. We don't know. When we went at the last round, there was talks that schools were going to close. And that's really the power that you as workers have, that you can close down our schools. We don't know at this time if schools will go online. But what we need to be doing is talking to the parents about why we are making these demands and why what we are doing is fighting for the services that their kids desperately need, and making sure that they're funding appropriately. We've had a couple of questions, and maybe Mona or Alex, maybe if the strike will impact my job as a new hire. So someone's saying, if the strike is going to impact my job, I'm going to vote no. Maybe you could help there?
Yeah, the legislation is there to protect people from getting terminated. So the Labor Relations Act is a protection against that. You cannot be fired for exercising your legal rights under the Labor Relations Act. And if they did, we would fight that 100%.
Yeah, I hope that helps. If some people are asking, why we're not doing a strike vote before school starts. And I just want to share that we represent 12-month and 10-month workers. Many of our workers have not come back to work yet, right? They're still in a position of layoff. And it's really important that workers are back on the job before we take any sort of strike votes. Somebody's asking to clarify the steps that lead up to actual strike action. There's a lot of confusion about how fast and what steps are actually needed to start a picket line. Sarah, maybe you could help that.
Sure. Well, the first step is to organize for the strike vote. And then the next step is to turn all those members out during the September 23rd to October 2nd period who committed to vote yes, and make sure that they have their ballot and they're going to vote yes. So recommit all of those members, give them another call. Then there's a strike mandate, and then the bargaining committee continues to negotiate as much as possible. And then Mona, maybe I can turn it over to you to talk a bit about the next steps from there.
Next steps in terms of where we need to get to be in
Before you get to a strike deadline.
Right. So we have to file for conciliation. So once we reach a point where we don't see any movement, between the two sides, we'll file for conciliation. Following that, if the conciliator is unable to get the parties to get closer and get a deal, then there is a 17 days before we can get a no board report. Once the no board report is given, then at that point, we will be in a legal strike position. Technically, there is one more caveat there for us because the School Board Collective Bargaining Act requires a 5-day notice to be given to the Crown and the CTA, the Council of Trustees Association, that we will be going out on strike. So there's a bit of a runway there from the time when we file for conciliation until we get to a place where we are in a legal strike position.
Thank you so much, Mona. Another really good question came in. If we were to strike, can we still access our benefits? And maybe Sarah, you would like to talk about, that's one of the benefits with being with with being with CUPE. We do have access to our benefits.
That's right. So through the strike fund that all of you contribute to through your dues, there is money for strike pay. So the $300 a week that Laura talked about. And CUPE will also pay both the employee and the employer contributions to make sure that your benefits continue, your extended health and dental benefits. And then for those of you who also have LTD, the LTD will continue also with CUPE reimbursing those contributions, and more information will follow through your local strike committees about all of that as well. There is also, I know we're getting a lot of really important questions about strike pay and benefits, and there is a strike pay and benefits FAQ that is circulating. Your local executive will have it, local organizing committee and strike committees will have it, and we'll also make sure that it's available on the website so that you can easily find out all of the answers to your questions. I know there's always a lot of questions about strike pay and benefits, and that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So somebody is asking, if you're a secretary treasurer, do you have to do picket duty to receive strike pay? All members have to do picket duty in order to receive strike pay. Nobody automatically gets strike pay. Those duties may differ depending on what role you're playing within the local. There also are accommodated duties that can happen and alternate duties that also can happen. But I can tell you, as the president of the Osbcu, I'm going to be on a picket line and I'm going to be doing my picket duty, and it's probably going to be at many different picket lines across the province in order to receive my $300. And I'm super excited about being out there with everyone and having that solidarity. We're all in this together, and frankly, we're stronger when we're united. Do we still have the Wednesday wear purple? Yes, we still have the Wednesday wear purple. We also encourage people to wear purple when we are at the bargaining table. And we had an earlier question, and I'm going to flip it over to Mike, who really doesn't like when we put him on the spot. But Mike, they're asking about t-shirts, and I know they have been ordered. They are coming out in the next little while, correct?
Let's say 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Sure thing. And that is part. And the new t-shirts that are coming from the OSBCU to your locals are based on the Why Vote Yes campaign. And so you can proudly display that we're counting you in. There's a lot of really good questions, and I personally don't know the answer to this one. I've never even thought about it. What about calendar holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day? How is strike pay handled for that? Does Dave or Sarah?
Go ahead, Dave. I'm just catching my brain up to the question. If you can answer, go ahead.
So the strike fund regs require 20 hours of picket duty in the week. I think your strike committees are going to have to determine what the plans are on weeks where there might be a holiday in there, and how we choose to make that up. But the regulations are clear that you have to perform 20 hours of picket pay in a week to be able to access the strike pay.
Awesome, thank you. Really good question. Leachy said he wants the term of the contract to be 4 years now rather than 3. How does the OSBCU feel about this? We feel like he's trying to force his way into another term as government. There is no real reason for this collective agreement to be more than the 3 years that they have always been, but they do have the ability in the legislation to do so. But again, that's just another example of how this government is willing to interfere to get what they want. A really good question. How does the strike affect our pensions? So while you're on strike, you are not making pension contributions. You can make a catch-up contribution to bring your pensions up to strike. And I know a lot of people go, when I first say that, but you have to remember you're on strike for such a short period of time. It's not the amount of pension that you would have to catch up, for instance, when I paid back my maternity leave, but rather, our hope is that we do a hard, fast strike that gets the gains that we need. There's a question about prep time, and prep time is at the table in a proposal. And it is available for this on our Facebook or on our website at osbcu.ca. Contracting out, absolutely. Custodians, clerical work, EAs. There is always the fear that this government is determined to privatize anything that's not nailed down. And it's for this reason that we must be vigilant and we must fight to get our job security so that they cannot do that. The question is, if they work in Toronto and live in the York region, can they strike at a location close to them? Absolutely. You most definitely. We have people who live in Barrie that work in Toronto. We have people who live in Coburg that work in Durham. Definitely, we can do that. That's the intent of a regional strike, a central strike. I do have a question. I'm going to turn this one over to Dan. Dan, there's many people who are asking about COLA, and there's no one I know that explains COLA better than you. And I'm not talking about the beverage.
Thanks, Laura. So the question is about a cost of living adjustment. Cost of living adjustments are pieces of or collective agreement language that adjust members' wages according to inflation. And in the 1970s, when we had a decade of very high inflation, unions tried to negotiate COLA clauses to try to protect their wages against erosion due to inflation. Many of those COLA clauses had very high thresholds to access them. They would require that inflation be 5 or 6 or 7% before they would actually kick in. So the COLA clauses themselves only partially protected against inflation. And not only did many of them have a floor, but many of them also had a ceiling. That is, that there was a cap on how much the COLA clause would actually cover. So if inflation went above a certain level. The COLA clause itself, in principle, it is something that we consider and we discuss, and there are always heated debates about whether the COLA clause is the appropriate measure or the appropriate way to address periods of high inflation. But a COLA clause is not a magic bullet. It is not something that fixes all of the problems that workers face when there are periods of high rates of inflation. in some ways, a COLA clause is a technocratic and bureaucratic approach to dealing with inflation. That is, it ties our wages to a measure that is beyond our control. It ties it to CPI as determined by Statistics Canada or some other measure of inflation. And when there are, let's be honest, our employers have an interest in creatively interpreting collective agreement language. So there is not necessarily a guarantee that having a COLA clause would prevent us from having a fight about inflation in the future with our employers. And because it's written into the collective agreement in a particular way, it channels class struggle into the grievance arbitration process rather than giving the power to the workers to actually fight for a wage increase that is meaningful. So the approach that has been taken so far is to calculate a wage proposal that accounts for the wage cut that members have taken due to regressive forms of legislation, and take some projections of inflation into the future and build that into the wage demand so that we can use the power of our members to fight inflation rather than a technocratic measure that was only ever partially successful at protecting our members' wages. I hope that answers the question adequately without going too deep into the long debates about COLA.
Thank you so much. One of the questions that did come up was, with the proposal and everything that's being said today, should the government propose anything less than 11.7? So let's be clear, we're asking for $3.25. It's a loonie, it's a toonie, and it's a quarter. The percentage is a media spin, so we don't buy into the media spin. All workers, it was voted on this weekend it was unanimous with one abstention. All workers will be given the opportunity to vote in a central strike vote that is conducted by the Osbcu, and that's because we are the bargaining agent for 55,000 workers. So all locals, every single member, every single local under CUPE, 55,000 plus people will all be given the opportunity to vote in the strike vote through the electronic voting process. It will require that locals get their information in, but yeah, the vote will be open to all. The other question, I think this is a great question. How can we afford to go on strike for only $300 a week? And I think that's a super fair question, right? $300 a week is not a lot of money. And I think really what it is a testament to is, how can we afford not to? We have so many people even on this call that talk about how their money, their wages have not gone up. They're receiving basically the same amount that they were. We hear it all the time. The food, the food insecurity, the housing insecurity. At this point, it's really coming down to, how can we afford not to strike in order to make the gains? And I've often said it, and I'll say it again. If we do what we've always done, we will get what we always got. And at this point, I'm encouraging everyone to join together and make sure that you are talking to your coworkers. Make sure you're dragging them. I don't care if you have to open up your own, phone and say, I need you to put in your email and vote. Everyone should be encouraging all of their coworkers to participate in the vote and to make sure that they are voting yes. In 2019, the government came back to the table right before we went on strike. Most school boards were warning parents that the schools can't close. They know that CUPE, they can't operate the schools without CUPE. I'm not sure why the government plays these games. It's propaganda. You're right, Anonymous. It is propaganda, but they will try anything. Just trying to see. The strike pay form, I just want to be clear, Sarah said, and we will be posting that frequently asked questions on our social media as well. The strike pay form will be coming through your local organizing teams. They are currently meeting this week and developing plans on how to reach out to every single worker. They will have the electronic strike pay form and can help you get that loaded up. The same goes for the strike vote. Many locals are already prepping to do meetings where they have iPads and computers set up so that people can log on right there and then and do it with support. I think that is awesome that people are thinking outside of the box. Why are we waiting until September 23rd to do the strike vote? To be honest, it works out perfectly. September 23rd is actually right after our last 2 dates. And so we are trying to apply pressure to this government to get to the table and negotiate, because that's, where this needs to be done. We have a question. What is a central strike? Sarah, maybe you can explain the central strike concept.
Well, this is a central strike because you have a central collective agreement, which you bargain at a central table with the Crown and the CTA. Legally it's a central strike because you have, you bargain at a central table by legislation. The strike is being organized on a regional basis so that locals can come together and be stronger and join forces on picket lines if it comes to that, and support each other and build solidarity across locals. We know that that's what it will take to win. It will take building the unity and the solidarity of 55,000 education workers across the province. And local strike committee members have formed regional strike committees and are organizing regional picket lines if it comes to that.
Definitely. Really good question. And I wish Candace was here to say it, but she said it yesterday or this weekend. The question is, how is our war chest in terms of financials? And National has been extremely clear. The National Secretary Treasurer was at our meeting this weekend, and the money is there. And the money is there, ready to go to support us. As a matter of fact, they made, huge work to make sure that we had everything we needed to even get started. And so the money is there, and the National Secretary Treasurer, Candace Rennick, has pledged her full support in ensuring that whatever the education sector needs in Ontario to get the job done, that she will be there and the backing of National will be there. And I think that's, a huge piece for all of us. A really good question that came up is, how do we expect to get the public support in this economic climate? Most people are not getting raises. And Dan, we didn't do that chart today, but there have been significant raises happening, not just in, the public sector, but in the private sector. And maybe you can talk about that.
Thanks, Laura. So in the first half of this year, private sector unions were settling collective agreements with an average of 4.1% increases. And in many cases, the private sector unions were getting, 9.5, 9.8% increases. There was at least one union that got a 15% wage increase in the first year of their collective agreement, and another one that got 19.5% increase in the first year of their collective agreement. So we are in an economy right now where workers who are willing to stand up and take strike votes, and in some cases take strike actions, are able to get substantial wage increases. And when we take those percent increases and convert them to dollars and cents per hour, they are comparable, and in some case, they're comparable to what we have put on the table. They're $3 and $4 an hour over the life of the agreement. They work out to be roughly what we are, what we have been proposing. So what we are proposing is reasonable. It's not inconsistent with what is out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. The other question has come up. This is a good rumor. Is it true that if we strike this time, we will never be able to strike again? Many rumors that we'll never be able to strike again if we strike now, if the government does this again in the years to come. Anyone want to tackle that juicy rumor? Alex?
Yeah, I do want to circle back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, and that is that by showing the government our strength, that is what is going to help preserve our right to strike, not only in this round, but in the long term. We know that this government, successive governments in Ontario, have taken away the right to strike from many of our siblings in other sectors. And we know that has not served them well, right? We're looking at folks in healthcare right now who are not getting the increases we need. And we see, how much those folks are hurting individually, but also how much it's hurting the quality of public services. So that is not a model we want to go to. The way to avoid that is to show the government we are strong and united and organized, and to have public support behind our demands and behind our right to engage in free collective bargaining. So it is really important that we come together to avoid us ending up in a model where our right to negotiate, those improvements that we need is taken away from us.
Excellent. So the question is Form E different from the strike pay forms that we were required to fill out and submit by the end of June from our local? Yeah, nobody needed to fill out any strike forms by the end of June. The Form E that needs to be done is electronic, and yes, that will need to be filled out. Absolutely. Estimated time that we can receive the info with the links for the strike, the Form E. Form E will be coming out hopefully this week, I believe. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. The regional teams are going out and meeting with all of their locals. And then the strike link will come out September 23rd. I'm just making sure. There's a question about how are we going to reach out and involve other unions and workers? People should be doing that right now. They should be doing that in their workplaces. They should be connecting with other unions and workers. We are setting up meetings and we're constantly in contact with education workers from Osbcu and from COPE, because our concerns are very similar, but we are working through the OFL as well. There's a lot of questions about what happens around COVID or any sort of health and safety questions. And I just wanted to confirm that our health and safety national rep, as well as our health and safety rep for the Osbcu and our injured worker rep for the Osbcu, are going through and looking at protocols to ensure that these are as safe as possible. Mona, you said there was a question about if bargaining ceases if we go on strike. From the Francophone group, and I haven't seen it, I'm sorry. No, bargaining doesn't cease leading up to the strike, and it definitely doesn't cease while you're on strike. As a matter of fact, we will continue to fight for what we as workers need. The question about if members haven't given their unions their email, how will they be able to vote? They need to give an email. And I'm going to be honest, it's your preferred email. Make sure you have a preferred email. If you do not have an email, because for whatever reason, and you can use your daughter's email or your son's email or your partner's email, use that email. But an email must be provided in order to be able to vote. The video. We will be posting this video on Facebook. We will be posting it on our website. There'll be lots of ways, and it'll be on our YouTube page. So folks will be able to share it with their friends and say, hey, you missed an awesome meeting. Make sure you catch the next one. The government says they can't give us what they want and what we want and deserve because they'll have to give it to all unions. I addressed this today in an interview. It's the government who established pattern bargaining, and it's the government that can stop pattern bargaining. The government should come and address individual worker needs as required. Pardon me. Excuse me. I am going to be posting the dates. I'm going to share them again. These are the key dates that are coming up. Between now and September 23rd, there'll be the Why Vote Yes campaign. I hope that many of you that are on this call will, say, hey, I can help out. I can talk to workers in my work site or in my school. So that campaign will be ongoing. Please reach out to your local. And if you can't reach out to your local, please reach out to us at memberorganizing@osbcu.ca, and we can connect you up with folks in your local. On September 22nd at 6 p.m., there'll be the virtual strike meeting webinar. And then there will be an electronic strike vote opening at September 23rd at 12:01. We'll do a daytime virtual strike meeting. Oops, sorry, as I flip through. We'll be doing a virtual strike meeting webinar on the 23rd for those who work nights the night before. And then locals will be encouraged to have strike meetings with their local or combining with other locals. October 2nd, the strike vote will close, and October 3rd at 9 a.m., we will post the strike vote results. I will make sure that that goes out. Trying to think, was there any other questions that folks saw? My team here.
Laura, there was a question about childcare during the strike. Yeah, so the issue of childcare for members who are parents of school age and daycare children is something that regional strike committees are working through right now. And they're looking at a number of different options, ranging from being able to provide some childcare or, kind of pairing up members who have kids and need to support each other with childcare. So they're really looking at all of the members in the region and what the needs are of all the parents in the region, how best the parents in the region want to set up childcare and what might work best. So that's something that regional picketing committees and administration committees are working on sorting out, and it's definitely top of mind.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, on the line learning is one of the things that we're considering, different ways to incorporate kids into the process. There's a really good question here about if the government doesn't budge and does not want to bargain, how long can a strike go on? And I want to be clear, building power starts tonight, right? Applying pressure, ensuring that your workplace and, your principals have principals cabinet that happen. I think it's super, super important that people understand that the minute you walk into your school or your work site, you need to be building that power amongst your coworkers and applying pressure before we even begin to strike. This isn't a situation where we've had this great meeting tonight and we're not going to worry about it until we actually say to go on strike. We need people to be building the power now, whether that be displays of purple that happen on Wednesdays, conversations, having, barbecues and rallies, leafleting, lots of ways that you can apply pressure within your communities to show that you are serious and you're not backing down. You are demanding what you as workers deserve. We are not looking for work to rule. I'm just going to say that again. It was a clear in our vote. It was a majority vote, result, and we would be moving to full withdrawal of services.
Laura, there have been some questions about how can we get talking points to talk with people in our lives. And so I know you talked about this earlier, but we might want to bring that back. There's a lot posted on the Osbcu Facebook page, so you can visit the link there. The summary of bargaining proposals is on the Facebook link. You can share that. That can be talking points. And there was also a flyer that was developed for members to use talking to parents. And if you think about 55,000 members, each talking to 10 people, that's over 500,000 people that you would reach. So it's a great question. And there are a lot of tools on the Facebook page, and local organizing committees have copies of those flyers that you can use also to talk to parents. And you can always reach out through the Facebook page as well to get a copy of that.
Definitely. There's a really good question in here is why do we refer to ourselves as education workers instead of support staff? That was actually a motion that was passed on a floor many moons ago. Many people felt that support staff did not recognize the professionalism that you all bring to your roles and instead kind of placed you in a more subservient position or a supportive position. And I think it's really important to understand that as education workers, we all work in education, just like we refer to hospital workers as hospital workers because they work in a hospital. Originally, for those of you that would remember 3 years ago, teachers did not refer to themselves as education workers. It's only been recently that they have co-opted that term. The question around the strike vote, it will be open for 10 days. Really good question here. Can they threaten termination for striking? Alex, over to you.
So, I mean, employers sometimes say and do all kinds of things, but we can say that you have a legal right to strike. We are taking the steps to move into a legal strike position. And as Mona said, the Labor Relations Act prohibits your employer from taking any action against you, any reprisal on the basis that you went on strike. And that's regardless of whether you're a full-time employee, a casual employee, a temporary employee, regardless of whether you're in probation and you started the day before. So CUPE will absolutely take actions to protect any worker if their employer tries to reprise against them for participating in a strike. The right to strike is a fundamental right that you have by virtue of living in Ontario.
Thanks, Alex. Just wanted to just say, if we haven't got to your question yet, that's because there have been over 1,500 questions tonight, which is absolutely fantastic. We've answered a mere several hundred of them, and we're trying to get them all as we can go. I wanted to just raise this one up. Will there be help for us to plan to negotiate late payments of phone bills, hydro, bank loans, and landlords while we are on strike? And Sarah, maybe you could talk about the hardship fund and the documents that are available.
Great. So right now, locals are setting up hardship funds. And so you need to speak with your local strike committees about your local's hardship fund and the policies that they have in place that govern those hardship funds to support members on strike. And there's also going to be more information coming from the regional strike committees, including a standard letter that you can take to your bank to ask for support or leniency in terms of making payments. Also, you could take to your landlord and other resources like that are coming.
Yes, absolutely. There's another really great question about could the teachers go online if we're on strike? And we've been answering that a lot on our Facebook page and on Twitter. Sure, teachers could totally go on strike. Who knows what they're going to do with them? But here's what I know. Our IT crew, right? The folks that we represent in IT are the ones that make all of those, devices, getting them into children's hands, making sure that they're running, making sure that they have hotspots. All of that is done by CUPE workers. And so there are a number of things. Sure, it could go online, but it's not necessarily going to go smoothly. And the other thing that I would just raise is in New Brunswick, they had such great parent support that parents refused to log their children in online. And instead chose to bring them to the picket line to show support. So, it's another reason why it's so, so important that we are out there talking about parents, about how we are fighting to ensure the services their students need are in place. A really good question about, is it not possible to have a symbolic vote so we have a ballpark figure on how many more people we have to convince or how effective the messaging has been? And Sarah, I feel like this is right up your alley to talk about how local organizing committees actually are doing that, not through a symbolic vote, but how are they doing that?
Yeah, so local organizing committees have been reaching out to members over the last couple of years, but especially since January, having conversations with members, asking members to sign a letter to the next premier, which you and your coworkers delivered to MPPs across the province, and which were also delivered at Queen's Park on June 23rd. So, conversations have been taking place at least since January with coworkers to try to gauge how many coworkers have been actively participating in your campaign to build the power to win in negotiations. But I think right now, where the bargaining committee has told us that we're at a critical juncture in bargaining, where it's going to take a strike mandate in order, and it's going to take each and every member being ready to strike if necessary in order to win your demands. And so, we're kind of past the point of anything symbolic and needing to have really conversations with each and every member about what's at stake in this round of negotiations and what it will take to win, and committing to participate in a strike. But yeah, all along there have been what we call structure tests, essentially just collective actions that you and your coworkers have been taking to track the level of participation of education workers across the province and CUPE members. And that's what you're building on now with the Why Vote Yes campaign, and your goal of reaching at least 80% of members in a commitment to participate in a strike vote. Of course, the goal is to talk to each and every member, but to have 80% of your members commit to participating in the strike vote.
Thanks. We have a question about, is Osbcu providing planning assistance to CUPE locals to organize our members before and in preparation for the 23rd vote? Sarah, maybe you could explain, or Dave, the regional strike headquarter leads and the work that they are doing.
Sure. So every local is assigned to a region. There are 17 regions in the province and 17 incredible Central Strike Committee regional leads, all of whom are working with local organizing committees in the regions. So yeah, that's how the organizing is happening. The regional leads are supporting regional strike committees that are getting ready for a strike, and local organizing committees that are getting ready to talk with each and every member about the Why Vote Yes. And there is a lot of support from the Central Strike Committee regional leads, and I know they're on this webinar trying to reach through it to reach all of you because they care so much about supporting local organizing committees and locals in reaching each and every member and doing what it will take to build the kind of worker power to win in this round of negotiations.
Thank you. The next question I see is, are teachers going to strike with us? I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did, but I don't. And I think, it's really great within your school and within your work site that you're talking to those teachers and asking them where they're at. My understanding is currently they have not yet passed proposals. I hope that helps. Just trying to see I'm trying to read everyone's. Why won't Lychee agree to our wage proposal, and what will it take? Well, what it's going to take is, over 80% of our members coming together and committing to fight and not backing down. And that will be seen by, a strong vote mandate. Right now, he's already starting to separate, well, this isn't your demand. This is, the union boss's demand. And we need him to be crystal clear that the union is the workers. There are not two separate entities. We work together and our fight is together. And that's what it's going to take for him to realize that he is not going to win. There's a really good question about picketing at different school boards and how her boards would know that they're there, I think your local would know how you're there rather than your board. I don't think your school board cares if you're at another location, but maybe they do, who knows? But what we have an electronic strike database. So the Form Es that you're filling out actually become the way that your picket pay is monitored. So you can show up at, you live in Barrie, but you work in Toronto, you can show up at the Barrie picket line, you can sign in, and it'll automatically be sent to your local to say, Laura Walton showed up at the Barrie picket line for 4 hours from 9 until 1. And so that your strike pay is automatically processed that way, which is pretty amazing that, we're able to do all that. It's technology is a wonderful thing. Oh, second jobs to subsidize. Listen, people don't just have second jobs to subsidize their strike pay. Currently, workers have second jobs just to subsidize the fact that they've chosen to work in the education system. And, that is the truth for the majority of you. Many of you do work second jobs, and that is to be understood. And there are ways that can be accommodated so that you are able to do your strike pay and then go work for your second job. The other thing that I would raise is that many of our workers are night workers, right? They work the evening shift or the night shift, and there are ways that, and are working at second job during the day. There are ways, again, that we can accommodate with, a variety of different alternative strike duties. So this is possible. Has the cost of living added to a pension in discussion? Our pension is through OMERS. It is not subject to negotiation at our bargaining table. At one time, our pension was indexed. Unfortunately, a particular teachers union decided to vote against indexing, and we unfortunately lost that, which is terrible. A really good question. If casuals are asked to work during a strike, do they have the right to refuse without being fired? I think Alex kind of tackled this one. No, you are go ahead, Alex. You say it so much better than
I. Yeah, I think the answer is actually yes. Do I have a right to refuse to go to work and not be fired? Yes, your job is protected. Let me be clear for participating in a strike. It doesn't matter if you're a casual worker, if you're a temporary worker, your employment status doesn't matter as long as you're an employee and you're a member of the bargaining unit. You have a right to participate in the strike, and you have a right to receive picket pay at $300 a week for conducting 20 hours of strike duties.
Thanks, Alex. And don't go anywhere. Oh, Mona, go ahead. And then I've got Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to add, in the last round, we had what we called a return to work protocol, which is something we negotiate at the conclusion of a strike. And in that case, it had been a work to rule. And we had people who had been disciplined. And in that protocol, we made sure that all of that discipline was removed. So just something to think about for these types of questions. That is definitely something we will be asking for.
Definitely. Alex, I didn't want you to run away because there's a good question here. Can the government order us to vote on any offer?
Yes, is the short answer. There is a provision in the Labor Relations Act by which the government can trigger what's called a forced offer vote. And it can actually force us to put to the membership an offer, even if the bargaining team does not want to put that offer to the membership. That is something we should always be prepared for. And we have to always be prepared to vote down a forced offer because that is the government going around your elected negotiating team. That is a sign of disrespect, not only for your elected negotiating team and not only for CUPE, but it's a direct sign of disrespect to you when governments do that. And let me just say, governments and employers, I should say, but let me say, they don't do that when it's an absolutely wonderful offer, right? They do that when they're hoping that the membership will accept a bad deal. And that's why this organizing work is so important, is talking to your coworkers about what's on the table and about why it's important that we support the demands of our bargaining team. Because look, you're going to hear a lot of messaging, whether it goes to a forced offer vote or not. Over the next few weeks, you're going to hear the minister on the media saying, this is a fair offer. Come on, it's easier. Just take it, right? Just accept what we're offering. And that's why we have to build the power and build the confidence of everybody to say no to what the government is offering and to back up the demands of our bargaining team. Because the reality is, those of us at the table don't have any power without the power of the membership backing us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. Some really great questions about how can we get the public to support us, or other than participating in the strike vote and the potential picketing, what else can I or others do to help our union? Like, you're making my heart sing. Sarah, what else can folks do to help out this effort?
You can join your local organizing or strike committee. Reach out to your local executive to find out how you can join your local organizing and strike committee. Right now, they are planning to have organizing conversations about the strike vote with all of their members, and that's a lot of people. So they need you. So reach out to your local executive to join the committee. You can also become a picket captain. Locals are in the process of recruiting enough picket captains to have one for every 10 to 15 members. Those picket captains are, the people who keep picket lines safe, but also who are responsible for organizing 10 to 15 members participation in the strike and talking with them in the lead up to a deadline. So you can become a picket captain, and there is picket captain training that is going to be available in September. There are 3 dates, and your local strike committees will have those dates and are probably waiting for you to call. So if you can reach out to your local executive, there are lots of opportunities.
Absolutely. There's a really great question about, is it better not to show our cards right away and leave the government wondering what we will do instead of letting them know, in regards to work to rule versus full strike? And listen, there's a little interesting piece that happens in the school board sector, thanks to the School Board Collective Bargaining Act, that doesn't happen anywhere else. And that is that we actually have to give 5 days notice of what we are doing. So there is no surprise for us. So for instance, if we were to work to rule, which has been suggested that they don't want to do that, we would have to give 5 days notice to work to rule, and then another 5 days notice to go on strike. As a matter of fact, it was one of the problems that we had the last round. We gave them enough notice and they began to discipline, reprimand, and in some cases, lay off workers while we were on work to rule. And I'm going to just reiterate it again. The demands that you as workers have require far more pressure than not sweeping the hallways or not filling the paper in the photocopier or, any of those pieces. We need to be serious and we need to show that we mean business. Really good question. For job sharing, do we picket 10 hours and receive 150? If you are part-time, yes, you can do that. However, you can choose to picket the full 20 hours and receive the full $300. What happens to the OSBCU negotiation team when we all go out on strike with their pay? I think this would ease the mind of the membership to tell them the response that was given at the leadership meeting on the weekend. Oh, I can tell you, the OSBCU negotiation team, including yours truly, will be on a picket line throughout the province, and we will be receiving $300. That is what is in the Constitution of QP National. We are members, we are workers just like you. We will be on the line beside you, collecting the same pay. We are all equal. What happens to our students when we go on strike? And I think that's a great, question, because we do care about our students. It's why we're fighting. I've already had conversations with lots of people who, the students are going to come out on the line to see us. Many of us have been talking with parents that we work with, having conversations and getting that support. And that's why it's so important to be having those conversations now and not when we are out on strike. Start building those relationships now. Somebody is asking, it's very disappointing that our strike pay has not increased. Actually, your strike pay has increased. Not too long ago, you didn't get strike pay from the first day. You got it from the 10th day. Then we moved it up. We were able to move it up to the 5th day. And then workers in CUPE Ontario organized at a national convention to get a motion on the floor to change the constitution to make strike pay from the first day. Also, it is now currently $300. That has gone up, but it also goes up the longer that you are out. So it has increased. Benefits are not suspended during a strike. Our plan to get public support is to continue what we're doing and encouraging you, the worker, to be talking. This isn't up to just a few people to be having these conversations. This is each and every person. Leachy has already said he would legislate us back. I have not heard that at all. And if you can provide a copy of that quote, I would love to have it. I'm sure as a party that is claim to fame is that they are working for workers and they're all about bigger paychecks and better jobs. He has not come out. For those in a different region from where we work, yes, you will be able to pick it at a line closest to where you live. There is no Metoo Clause. I'm just going to raise that again. Alex, maybe you could just remind folks about the legislated back or being deemed essential. There's several people who have questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are all kinds of different forms of legislative intervention. We've just seen one under Bill 124, all of which are bad for CUPE members. We know that. But returning to what I said earlier, that's not inevitable. As Laura said, there's no legislation right now that has been put forward in the legislature, which is what would need to happen. It would need to be debated and passed. They haven't gone down that road. We still have a chance to prevent the government from daring to go there, from daring to take away your right to strike in order to impose a concessionary deal on you, right? So I think the power is in the membership to make it politically impossible for the government to restrict your rights and for the government to force you to take another several years of wage cuts on top of the years of wage cuts that you've already had.
There is a question, and Dan is my graph guru. They're requesting a graph that shows the MPP's wages and how they've increased in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I don't have that data at my fingertips, but I could pull something together shortly and have that available.
That would be awesome. Thank you. I'm just trying to go through and make sure. We only have like a few minutes left, so I'm trying to catch all of these as I can.
Maybe just reiterate the benefits.
Yeah, definitely. So benefits, I'm going to just be very clear on it. You are able to access your benefits. Your benefits will be covered, providing that you are participating in the 20 hours of picket duty. Your benefits will be covered, and your LTD, if you are a local that has LTD premiums, they will also be covered. But that is based on, participating in the strike. A lot of people are asking, if you've given us this email, does this mean like you're all good for the strike vote? No. You need to be providing your local with your email during the Form E and for the strike vote. This is great, and we'll make sure that you get information from us, but you do need to make sure that you're connecting with your local and having that information as well.
Laura, there are a few questions about picket pay and if you can picket more than 20 hours a week to be able to increase, or if you work at two different boards, if you can get 300 for one and 300 for the other. And the strike fund regulations are the same across the board for everyone across the country as CUPE members. It's 20 hours a week, and that gets access to the $300. And you're more than welcome to picket more than that. Like no one will turn you away from a picket line, but what you can get for strike pay is limited to $300.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I guarantee that there'll be some of us who are doing several shifts of 20 hours, but it'll be $300. I promise you. If you don't know your local number or you've been trying to get involved and you just haven't been able to connect, please, please, please reach out to us on Facebook, reach out to us at info@osbcu.ca or member organizing at osbcu.ca. We have, everybody's information. We can connect you with the local organizers to make sure that you are involved.
We also
Do you have to click?
Oh, sorry, Laura, one more. We have a question about strike pay around how it happens, weekly, bi-weekly, how quickly will they get it? I thought maybe you want to touch on that.
Absolutely. So strike pay is weekly. It's based on 20 hours of work. We are encouraging locals to look into electronic funds transfers rather than the old-fashioned writing checks. A, nobody needs carpal tunnel. B, it just is a much more secure, quick process to be done. But your locals are working, and I know several locals have already made that happen. Somebody has asked me about tradespeople making less an hour than market value. Why are we being forgotten again? Our increase should not be lumped in with everyone else. And I agree with you. You will get a wage increase like everyone else, but we are also fighting to improve C14, which states that if the wages of, for instance, a trade, a plumber, an HVAC, any job classification are lower in the school board than they are in the public and private sector, that the wage shall be adjusted to be at that market value. So it's not just that you're going to be getting the flat rate increase, but we also have language that's being proposed to accommodate what is a very huge issue within our trades and within other classifications to bring folks up. So you are not being lumped in with anyone else. You are not being forgotten. As a matter of fact, I'm going to just amplify that Rod is steadfast when we're talking about this. But it's a reason why our tradespeople need to be fighting, because we need to make that change for all. You do not pay taxes on your strike pay. Just going to say that. Benefits are still covered. Going to say that again, just as how long does strike pay last? Well, until we go back in, and it actually goes up the longer you are out.
Laura, one question that I saw being raised quite a number of times in the chat was whether people could receive EI benefits while on strike. So there may be cases where you would get certain types of benefits, such as pregnancy or parental EI benefits if you were on a leave at the start of the strike, but you can't apply for EI regular benefits and say, well, I'm unemployed because I'm on strike. That's not a reason that qualifies you. What happens, as we've gone over, is that you would apply to QP for strike benefits for participating in 20 hours a week. But EI is not going to give you EI regular benefits for a job where you're on strike.
Exactly. I just wanted to raise, somebody has asked this question. I think it's very, very valid. According to the law, we need 50% plus one of members who have voted to vote in favor of a strike, and then it's strike for the entire province, for all 55,000. That is not our goal. Our goal is 80% of workers across this province voting in favor 95%. And so, yes, if one local says no, if it comes back as the majority, it still applies, because this is a central strike based on central negotiations and not a local strike. And I'm just going to check and make sure there's so many, and we're going to be putting out an FAQ. We are saving all these questions to make sure that we have that. And we will be posting this into our YouTube and posting the link. Oh, how will transparency be maintained during negotiations, and how will negotiations be communicated up to them? So we are committed to full transparency. We will be continuing our bargaining updates. You can go and sign up for those. The link is on our Facebook page. I encourage every single one to be involved and see how this is going. We put it out right away. Strike votes should accommodate every member, including those without access to a computer and phone. We agree. We are encouraging locals to ensure that that happens. We actually have a local who is doing what they call the dog and pony show, and they are visiting. They have an extremely large geographical area, and they are going with computers to the members to help facilitate. And I think that is awesome. Bargaining is not over. To be clear, we have a date on Friday and three more dates as we go into September. And so I think what I'm going to do is end it on like the best note that I can. We had a question that came in that said, what did New Brunswick do to create their success? And it's really, really interesting because just recently we had a New Brunswick member say, if New Brunswick can afford to give their EAs $30 an hour, so can Ontario. And I just want to be very clear, what they did is what we're asking you to do. Conversations with coworkers constantly, not just one and done, hey, I talked to you, I don't need to talk to you again, but constant conversations with the coworkers, constant conversations with the public, getting folks on side, talking. And that's what they did. And that's how they were successful. They were also successful because they stayed united across the province, regardless that they were from different locals, regardless that they were from different classifications. As a matter of fact, in New Brunswick, it wasn't just education workers. It was several sectors. And that solidarity, that constant communication, that constant organization is key. All right, and I think, so we will be following up with an invitation to attend the meeting. That does not negate if you attend the meeting on the 22nd with us or 23rd, you still can go to your local, and I would encourage you to go to your local strike meeting. It's really important that people are going to be, involved. Bring a friend, bring 5 friends, carpool, get a minivan, load them all in. We want everyone involved. And talk. I can't say this enough. People are asking, how do we share these messages? The way you share these messages, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. I think that's all of them, our website, and share. Keep sharing, keep talking, keep amplifying those brave folks that are already doing that. Don't be afraid of the trolls, but don't amplify them either. But at this time, I am going to close tonight. It is awesome. You guys have really helped us see that this is a success and this is something we want to continue doing. Please, the next time we do this, make sure you call a friend and make sure that they are involved as well. Alrighty, take care, everyone. Have a great evening.